Friends, welcome to another edition of Meditations and Transformations. I think that you're going to notice that on this video, that I'll try to make as short as I possibly can, that my voice is not going to be quite as calm and soothing as it has been in previous meditation videos. That's not because I'm trying to be combative and aggressive, but rather because I am passionate and actually hopeful about what I'm saying to you in this meditations. Can I read something to you that I saw on the internet today? It's not something totally surprising. We've heard this before many times, but here it is again, and I think we're hearing it increasingly. This particular version says, without data to prove outcomes, it's hard to evaluate the effectiveness of future-focused strategies. I called for bold, innovative approaches to measurement. By integrating more quantitative methods, even if that results in debate, and then this person puts in parentheses, because foresight folks are resistant to measurement in my experience, into parentheses, we can foster accountability and better demonstrate the value of strategic foresight initiatives. Can we? Can we? I want you to see, not because my way or the highway, but because foresight by its very nature moves from a less mature version of seeing the universe and the world and life around us, which is quantitative, linear, mechanistic, to a more mature version of seeing the world around us, life and people and systems, more mature, that's qualitative in nature. That's just good evolutionary science. It's less mature to think quantitatively and more mature to think qualitatively. Let me not try to prove that to you. Let me call on some voices tonight of some people that are more than likely much smarter than I am, and who that I have learned from so much in my own life. As a matter of fact, one of the first people that I want to read, I'm going to read 3 sort of big block quotes to you tonight, and maybe do just a little brief commentary on each one, but I'll let them speak for themselves. The first one is from my friend Sophie Strand, amazing poet, author, the walker. If you haven't read any of Sophie's books, mind-boggling. She's just amazing. And I would love to see more futures thinkers lean into her thinking or the way she thinks and the kind of work she does, which so many others are doing today. And so we just interviewed Sophie Strand, and the interview will be out in our Creating Foresight Fueled Action series in January. So I know it's a tease, but here, I'll read some Sophie Strand to you. This is from an article that she wrote called Make Me Good Soil. And at first, it may not seem like it has anything to do with the quote that I just read you from the internet. But she says, we live in a culture that prizes the atomized self, inappropriately foisting healing onto individuals when disease and discomfort are the multi-causal snares of systems of oppression within which we are stuck like flies in a spider's web. We think we must heal individually and succeed individually. We are taught also that we feel and sense individually, keyed only to direct contact with our skin-delineated corporality. This phenomenon is known as healthism and is defined as a preoccupation with personal health. The personal responsibility for health is primary, often at the detriment of understanding that the health of one person is intimately tied to and representative of a whole population. Illness, trauma, and pain do not belong to an individual. They are a web that includes someone. Likewise, healing is not an object or an achievement that belongs to one person. Research into embodied cognition, ecology, microbiology, somatics offers a glimpse of something leakier than the modern idea of self itself. And so she goes on to say, how does a body understand itself in environments that leak and twitch and spasm in reaction to extractive capitalism and pollution? How does our body stay siloed from the pain of the places that it calls home? We must remember that ecology comes from the word Greek The Greek word oikos, this is a word that we used to use all the time. Household. We are always inside of a web of relationships, a household of beings. We live in an age of atrazine and microplastics, blood pressure stabilizer and tap water, ancient Mesozoic ferns churned into smog imprisoned in the vascular of our lungs. We live in an age when environmentalism rests on the bedrock of eugenics and ableism and homophobia, positing queers and crips as genetic glitches and evolutionary maladaptations productively defunct. Our environments, our environmentalism as well, is polluted. And our ideas of healing are often tailored to much smaller and smaller and smaller selves than the ecologically entangled webs we drag into the practitioner's office. On a grand scale, all of us have ingested molecules re-articulated by the nuclear bombs that were dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima decades ago. And although our culture is remarkably good at pretending that you can disappear waste, waste has a way of making its way back into our every pore of our being. Comfortingly, waste also underpins all healthy food webs, stitching together multi-species ecosystems. One being's waste as another being's food. Food webs are created by the transmutation of waste into nourishment. But we both create more complicated waste than we ever before have, and then refuse to understand how to weave it back into a food web. We pretend waste and nature are separate. Humans and nature are separate. Now, I know it may not seem like Sophie's quote there, that big block quote that I gave to you from her article, has a lot to do with the quote where I read to you this, like, we've got to measure more. We need more data. We need more quantification. Well, we absolutely do not. This is not to say that quantification is absolutely wrong. This is to say that in a world where we are inundated with quantification, we're not going to suddenly stumble on how to use all of that quantification to solve our problems. Some of the quotes that I'm going to read to you, the other two quotes that I'm going to read to you tonight from two other authors, are going to make this point very well. But Sophie made it herself when she talked about health and atomization, the atomization of self, and smaller scales of measuring and not understanding the web and that qualitative essence of all of life in all of its circumference and grand scale. How can we future in foresight if we don't think critically in that way about these systems that cannot be broken down into their pieces, but must be put together at a larger grand scale of sensing and thinking and feeling and intuiting in order to really understand patterns of change and the stories and narratives that move us? Quantification will never get you there, ever, ever, ever. Let me just read the next piece to you, but that you'll hear in Sophie's words and in these next two quotes, the Einstein accredited quote, where he said, the problems that we have are that we wrestle with cannot be solved at the same level of consciousness, not the same level of data, the same level of consciousness that created them. It is not a higher use or a greater input of data and quantification that's needed. It is a higher level of critical thinking and consciousness and understanding that goes beyond mental capacities and neuroscience and cognition, but dives deeply into the love and the beauty and the awe and the wonderment and the enchantment of life itself. Robert Rosen, life itself. You'll hear that again in these next two quotes, but this one shifts the gears a little bit. I love Sophie's writing because she talks about atomizing to finally find that answer. When the answer is never in atomizing, you and I are linked together intimately. The answer is in this thinking, sensing, feeling, intuiting of that linkage which cannot be measured. A new vision requires a new way of thinking, of seeing, of understanding, of measuring, of defining what measurement even means. This one's by Charles Eisenstein, and he's talking about technologies of separation. And he says these technologies have utterly transformed the world in the last few centuries, but they are proving incapable of solving the problems that we face today. Many of which, ironically, are caused by the very same kinds of technology that we hope to use to fix those problems. Whether it's agricultural chemicals degrading the soil and creating the need for even more chemicals to try to fix the problem, or medical interventions causing side effects that require further medical interventions to try to fix the problem, technology often becomes a fix, like we're going to fix something, I need to fix something. In the sense of an addiction requiring more technology, more quantification, more linearalism, more measurement. Managing the results of all that we do, of all of our technology, of all of our mechanization, on a broader scale, the entire scientific industrial system has created ecological degradation and social atomization. Oh, there's that word again that Sophie used, atomization. We're atomizing, more and more atomization, more technology, more atomization, more AI, more atomization, more cell phones, more atomization, more social media, more atomization, more. How much more do we need? And we attempt to fix all of that from within the same technological mindset of quantification and engineering and control. And it follows the dream of techno-utopia that if only we could exercise precise control over every bit of matter, if only we could quantify and label and measure and digitize every object with its own IP address, then we could manage the world rationally and eliminate uncertainty and maximize human well-being. On the social level, the same ambition translates into the program of total information awareness so that each economic transaction, each social interaction, all physical movement is tracked and saved in one gigantic database. Yet it is becoming obvious that despite continued advances in our ability to control matter in society, the promise of utopia is receding into the future, and indeed has passed the event horizon, not to be fixed by quantification and measurement. And we call this cynicism. No longer does anyone believe that material or that social engineering is on the verge of ushering in a perfect world. For these reasons, the failed promise and worsening crisis of technology as we know it today, yes, the crisis of technology. Think about that statement. I would like to offer an expanded conception of technology. The kind of technology described above is but a subset of all technology, a subset I'll call technologies of separation. These will always have their place, but at the present historical moment, we need to shift our collective will and energy toward a different kind of technology, which I call technologies of reunion. To expand the definition of technology, we can simply return to the original Greek roots again. Isn't that funny? Back to Greek words, oikos meaning household. Here, technology means a logos of crafts. Technology is a system of techniques for applying human will to alter the physical world. And so technology is not just a haphazard collection of techniques, but as a logos of crafts implies that these techniques are interrelated. They grow from a common logic, a unified narrative, a worldview. This narrative determines what we would consider to be real, to be possible, to be important, answers questions. What can we do? What can we do? What can we do? What should we do? What should we do? How can we do it? How can we do it faster and more efficiently? The technologies of separation that dominate the world today draw from the story of separation, siloing, quantification, measurement, which includes humans separate from nature, because that's how we measure it. The self is separate individuals, because that's how we measure them. Full selfhood, consciousness, and sensuous existing in humans alone. Competition is the defining characteristic of life. Domination, control over others is the key to well-being. That all things are comprised of generic, identical building blocks. That to be real is to be measurable and quantifiable. That the forces of nature are basically random, so human progress depends on insulating ourselves from their dangers and harnessing them for our purposes. Linear, reductionistic thinking is the basis of technology and of foresight, probably too, right? Force-based causality, human destiny to conquer or transcend nature. These are the threads of the mythology that has overtaken civilization over the last several thousand years, and especially the last few hundred years. It's rapidly becoming obsolete. It's not increasing, it's rapidly becoming obsolete. That way of measuring, of quantifying is becoming obsolete. I would say it's become obsolete. That doesn't mean that it doesn't keep going on. Dead bodies get drug around, but it's obsolete. Giving way to new and ancient stories, the story of interbeing. This is what Daniel Christian Wall talks about. Interbeing is our way forward. And this story holds that the self is relational at its core, that humans are not separate from nature, that what we do to the world is what we do to ourselves. The basic qualities of self, consciousness, and intelligence are ubiquitous and universal. Everything is alive. Everything is conscious. Each being is a holographic mirror of all things. Cooperation, not competition. Sharing and symbiosis are defining characteristics of life and evolution. Morphic resonance is the primary causal principle, and each being has unique and necessary gifts to give toward the well-being and evolution of the whole. Did you hear it again in there? Sophie was talking about the connection of beings, the complex responsive processes of the interrelation of all of life, of all of action, of all of being. The only way to foresight that, the only way to future that is through not just thinking, but feeling, sensing, intuiting, not measuring. One more quote. This one's a little quicker because I think it ties the whole thing together. Nora Bateson made up a word sometime back to replace the word systems, because systems has got so much baggage in it, and again says, break it down, silo it. What's the system? How do we measure it? And so instead she said, this is not how life works, but life works through this word that I will create called symathesy, which really speaks about mutual learning context. If you want to future, if you want to dive into deep futuring, if businesses and governments and societies and organizations want to do good deep futuring, shoot, you've got a million ways to measure already. Don't do more of that. Find out as a business how to sense better, how to feel better, how to intuit better, how to measure differently, not quantification. I know there's people that are hearing this that is probably making you really upset because this is what you do. But there is a way to do even what you do differently. And I have found over the years that those who get the most riled up about something usually end up being the ones who think the most critically about it. So welcome. So symathesy describes not systems, but mutual learning contexts that speak one to another and are tied together. As a matter of fact, Nora says, I would like to propose this word symathesy. The new word and concept for system that I propose is one which highlights the expression and communication of interdependency and particularly mutual learning. The existing word system, while useful for discussion of many kinds of systems, does not communicate contextual fields of simultaneous learning. How can foresight learn? How can futures thinking think about the future if it's not for all and of all and in all and around all? As is necessary for life itself, the inclusion of mutual learning and the terminology specifically meant to preclude the models of engineering and mechanism that are implicit in systems thinking, quantify, mechanize. We have learned that when dealing with living systems, the many variables of developing interaction become untenable. To consider an even such a mechanistic parameter, this change in concept should spark a significant shift in our work, all of our work, no matter what field we're in. The discourse with which we discuss and study the living world should be representative of the living world, not of systems of quantification, which is not how the living world works. It's not. And should cautiously and avoid connotations that imply engineering, mechanization, and quantification. She ends by giving us a poem that describes symathesy. I'll read it to you. Each one of us is a crooked tree, reaching for water and light. bending ourselves around obstacles, scary thoughts, hurtful moments, darkness and thirst, finding a way to breathe in the sun and hold the soil. Our branches are kinked and they're twisted because that is what it took to be here. The ways of learning to be in our worlds have shaped responses. Our many experiences are speaking through every gesture, our loves and broken paths, a tenderness, a criticism, learning always, yearning always in crooked beauty, to be a home for those who find comfort in the asymmetry of our belonging. A nest cradling new life tucked into an old log teeming with creatures learning to be in each other's reshaping. I hope you've enjoyed this meditations and transformation. I'll see you on December 10th at the kickoff of the Dragonfly Journey. Join us for 90 minutes, and I promise that I won't be like this. I can't promise that. But I do promise that we will commune in community, and I look forward to seeing you there. I'll put the link in the comments below. Take care, my lovelies.